Hello, I'm Charlotte Cohen and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Wednesday the 4th of February. And what a feast of Premiership action we have for you tonight.
Header, goal! St Mirren have their goal! It's Miguel Freckleton! It could be a massive goal at the bottom and the top of the Premiership.
Hearts lost ground in the title race last night in a dramatic match at St Mirren. Now the spotlight turns to the chasing Celtic and Rangers as they take centre stage.
It's Benjamin Nygren on the left foot, 2-0. Benjamin Nygren, superb goal from Celtic.
Oh, what a goal! That'll do it for Rangers. Gassama with a beautiful curling effort.
Can they close the gap and keep pace with the leaders? Plus, there's a new, albeit familiar face in the Livingston dugout as Marvin Bartley takes charge.
Nothing's easy for us at this moment in time, and we understand that. The only way you get out of that is by good performance in the winning games of football. People say to me, what do you put first, performance or points? For me, that's a stupid question. It's points.
We'll guide you through all the big issues ahead of tonight.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Alongside me to do that, Andy Halliday, his podcast debut, Motherwell midfielder. Andy, good morning. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you for being here. And alongside us this morning, Gordon Waddell, Scottish football writer. Gordon, good morning. Are you excited for the big games tonight?
Oh, the Falkirk Livingston game, is that where we're going first? Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely thrilled. No, a big night ahead. As
Gordon says, plenty to get into this morning. Well, let's start with last night in Paisley. Hearts making life difficult for themselves, another red card, and in the end, probably a deserved win for St Mirren. Andy, what does that do for the title race? I'm sure Celtic and Rangers were looking at that result with a wee bit of a smile on their faces.
Yeah, it was a relatively surprising one. I think Hearts fans would have celebrated their first ever Hibernian point at the weekend when they managed to take 2 off Rangers and give themselves a 6-point cushion going into what was obviously going to be a crucial three games. Obviously St Mirren last night in Paisley is never an easy game for any team in the league. And when you see that Hearts following that have Hibs and then Rangers at Ibrox, you knew pretty much it was going to be a pretty big 3-game spell for them. And they dropped points at the first hurdle. I thought it was a game where St Mirren dominated for the get-go, to be honest. Even with 11v11, I thought St Mirren were a better side. I thought it was really, really uncharacteristic of Hearts in terms of their performance. I didn't think they looked quite as sharp as they usually do. Don't play forward enough. But what's not uncharacteristic lately is a Hearts red card. So obviously it plays a big bearing on the game. You've got to say it's probably as clear a red card as you'll see all season. So I don't think there can be too many complaints from managers. But I thought St Mirren were excellent. They would have just been frustrated it took so long that they did before they got the goal, because they'll remember going down to 10 minutes to Castle and Hearts eventually going on to win that game. So it was a disappointing night for Hearts, obviously, and it just opens this title race up even further.
Yeah, as you say, Andy, a disappointing night for Hearts, but elsewhere, Celtic were probably looking at that game and thinking, wow, our trip to Pittodrie now is even bigger, Gordon?
Yes, I'm sure Celtic and Rangers fans and players, managers alike were watching last night, and as soon as Craig Halkett went off the park, we'd all have been hoping one thing, and they got it about 2 minutes from time. But yeah, I mean, but the pressure now lands on them to make up the ground, and that's going to be the interesting thing tonight, is to see how they cope with that. That's at the weekend. Hearts played first, and put some distance between them. Last night they didn't. Next week's going to be the same when Hearts play on the Tuesday night, and the rest of the games are on the Wednesday as well. So it's about how they respond to that, and there's definitely pressure on them to close the gap tonight. And obviously everybody's now looking with interest to see how all their varying new boys from the last day of the transfer window go tonight as well. How many of them make an appearance? And Celtic especially are probably under a bit of pressure. I mean, they were. I saw somebody comparing their business to the husband rushing into a shop at 7 o'clock on Christmas Eve, trying to buy his missus a nice present. Having left it.
You've been talking to my wife, Gordon.
Having left it to the last minute, and I thought it was a fairly apt comparison, but so it remains to be seen whether. We've obviously seen a couple of their loan signings already, who both look pretty decent, but the three they picked up on deadline day. Everybody's waiting probably with eager anticipation to see what they can contribute to. So,
well, yeah, I was going to ask Andy what you made of Celtic's January business, but I think Gordon summed it up quite nicely. I suppose you guys in the Motherwell camp will be delighted to have your man Stephen Welsh back.
Yeah, definitely. Had to sit tightly and sit quietly for a long period of time. It didn't come till extremely late on the night, but Welsh has been superb since he's came in for us. It's well documented. The last 15 games we've only conceded 4 goals, 9 clean sheets in a row at Fir Park. Stephen Welsh has been a huge part of that, as well as many others. So we've managed to cope okay without him, but there's no doubt that since he's been at the football club, he's been a massive help to any success we've had this season. The manager was pretty vocal with the fact he wanted to bring a centre half in while Welsh is away, and we kind of felt within the dressing room that because it took so long to even hear a rumour of another centre half, then he must be pretty confident that he could potentially get Stephen back. So, I talked about Hearts celebrating a Hibs point there. I was celebrating a Celtic link to a centre half because I knew it probably led to one thing, and it was us obviously getting Stephen back.
And just looking at the transfer window as a whole. Sorry, were you going to jump in, Gordon?
No, I was just going to say to ask Andy if he felt it was a slightly strange one that Celtic took him back, only used him. They cup tied him obviously against Auchinleck, and then played him for maybe about 7 or 8 minutes as a substitute against Falkirk. So they had him back for that month, and then and obviously, as Andy rightly points out, he was probably one of the players in the first half of the season and the whole league. And yet the one thing that they've done is bring in a young centre half and send Stephen back to Motherwell. The whole thing just struck me as being a little bit odd, that if they wanted him back and given his performances, I thought they might have used them, but obviously that they haven't to any great extent, and then sent him back and then signed a young centre half to presumably to participate in the first team squad seemed, I don't know, it just all seemed a little bit unstructured to me, and it seemed slightly unfair on the player. I know he's Celtic's player, well, he's their guy, but
I think we'd obviously heard that the deadline for Celtic to recall Stephen was on the 14th. They obviously recall him on the 13th, so we weren't sure that maybe did Celtic miss on a target or two within that sort of 14-day time frame. But then when they do recall him, we obviously thought that he was going to pretty much play back up to Liam Scales and Austin Trusty. But then you see where you've got that Celtic's biggest game of the season at the time going to Tynecastle, where Dane Murray's on the bench and Stephen Welsh isn't on the bench. So when Austin Trusty gets sent off just going into the second half, then that for me is a scenario where Stephen Welsh probably got recalled for to be when called upon, but obviously it wasn't the bench. Dane Murray was. So you felt at that moment in time, right, there's obviously a right good chance that you can get Stephen back, because it doesn't feel as if he's gone back to be part of Celtic's short-term plans from now to the end of the season. It's obviously to just provide cover. But like I said, it's just pretty thankful that we've managed to get him back. He's been excellent for us.
Yeah, could be massive for the next few months for you guys as well. Just looking at Aberdeen, who host Celtic tonight, they are still without a manager. They came off the back of that big win at Livy against Livy, and you're kind of thinking, oh, hold on, they've maybe turned things around, to then go and get beat 3-0 off Kilmarnock. I mean, Gordon, that's going to worry supporters, going from that big win to then just completely capitulating.
It is, and they've done a fair amount of business in January as well. They've signed 7 players, and there's a bit of pedigree there in what they've signed. But I was having a look last night at the guys who came in late. But Geiger hasn't played all season. McIntyre, who's obviously come in, had started maybe 5 games for Bradford, and I think Aremu had started once for Kaiserslautern. So there's pedigree there, but there's no form and there's no games embedded in them. So, and I know that looking at what Peter Leven's been saying, I mean, with the guys that they've got out just now, all 3 of these guys are probably going to be expected to actually come into the team. and he's going to be asking them to try and hit the ground running when they've got no games in them. I mean, you look at, there was an example for Rangers last week as well when Scott Olsen and everybody kind of went, "Oh, what a player!" and rightly so. I mean, he's a terrific talent, but he's not got any games in his legs, and it showed when he played against Hibs at the weekend. But Aberdeen are, it's weird. You wonder how much longer they'll leave it before they try and bring in a permanent manager. Apparently, the process is still ongoing, with that word in quotes. But it's obviously, they're a weird lot, and I think the Livingston game eventually will be seen as more of a blip. You'd like to hope that the game at the weekend was the blip, but I'm not sure that the win over Livingston wasn't the blip.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Let's take a look at one of the other games tonight. Rangers at home to Kilmarnock. Andy, do you think their new big money signing, Ryan Naderi, could get his first start tonight, or do you think Danny Rowe will maybe want to just hold off a little bit, maybe bring him on as a sub?
I must admit, I thought when he was announced late into Monday night, I thought he probably would start on Wednesday, given that Bojan Miovski and Yusuf Chermiti haven't actually set the world alight. They've not exactly nailed down their own jerseys. But I've seen a couple of comments for Danny Rule saying that I think the exact words was he needs some touches in our league to get used to it. So I don't know if that was him cautiously saying that Rangers fans have to be a little bit patient. But to me, I think that I always think it's vastly underrated how important a potential early goal is for Rangers' new signings, specifically when it's attackers. So I think when you've got an opportunity, with all due respect, at home to Kilmarnock, who've only won one game in such a long period of time, Rangers will feel like they're pretty heavy favourites. They'll try and obviously be attacking for the get-go and create chances and score goals. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to thrust Ryan Naderi into the spotlight. Whether that obviously happens or not remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure is Rangers need a vastly improved performance. Not just for the weekend against Hibs. I think for the last few games, to be honest with you. I think they've done ever so well at winning games when they've not been playing well. But for me, I didn't think it was ever sustainable, especially when you don't create a host of chances for your open play and you've been relying on set pieces for such a period of time. So it eventually caught up with them against Hibs at the weekend, who I thought were very good on the day. Kilmarnock, like I says, have only won one game in a long period of time, but for their point of view, their one win was the last one, and it was against Aberdeen in convincing manner. So they'll obviously be trying to build on that. But you've got to say that Rangers should be large favourites going into it. Ryan Naderi obviously potentially being in the team, but they'll need a big improvement for Andreas Skov-Olsen as well.
Yeah, as Andy says, we've seen Rangers win games without playing particularly well. Gordon, do you think with these new signings in the building, if they start to find their feet, we'll maybe actually see an improvement in the performance that's leading to these results from Rangers?
Charlotte, I'm not 100% sure that will be the case, and without being too pessimistic, but I always think these things, when you come out of the January and you've done 4 or 5 players worth of business, again, it's not easy just to bed 4 or 5 players straight into your team and expect them all to understand, especially if you're a manager who has a system. And I'm sure Andy would testify to this, in as much as that, if you look at like Motherwell as an example of that this season, the players have to learn how to play to the way the manager likes, and so therefore you wonder how some of these guys fit into that. Naderi being a good example. From everything that I've read about him, he seems to operate as almost like a proper target man. I mean, he's a big guy. And he seems to have a lot of qualities in that department. But do Rangers play to that skill set? That's going to be, or do Rangers change the way they play to accommodate him? To a certain extent. But it'll be, listen. All that matters to Rangers fans just now is not so much how they're playing, but that they're winning. And that's, if they scrape a scabby 1-0 tonight, then I'm sure most people will leave. Most Rangers fans will leave the ground happy, and likewise for Celtic tonight as well up the road. But it's I think it's less about style and more about substance at the moment.
And I mean, looking at Kilmarnock, as Andy said, Gordon, they'll be buoyed by that victory over Aberdeen, who are, you know, a team above them in the league, as they're fighting for points on the board. Could you see them getting anything against Rangers? I suppose it depends. You need a bit of luck, etc., etc.
I mean, why not? I think everybody's looking this season at Rangers and Celtic as being slightly or more vulnerable than they have been. I think when they go and play them. Andy will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I know even that as a Falkirk fan watching the Bairns, go and play Celtic at the weekend. And those, in days gone by, you would just be thinking, oh man, as long as we avoid a 4 or a 5 and avoid a pumping here, then, you can walk out and feel less damaged. I don't think players now look at going to play Rangers and Celtic in quite the same light and play these particular versions of the Rangers and Celtic teams in the same light. And I think that everybody goes thinking that there's a little bit of vulnerability there about both of them, that they don't have the quality that you really need to fear. They're still favourites and all that, but I think that Neil and Billy Dodds will have their players going there thinking that they're entitled to think that they can go there and get a result, and the evidence so far this season doesn't disprove that.
Now let's take a look at the rest of tonight's fixtures. We'll start with Livingston against Falkirk. Marvin Bartley taking the reins at Livingston. And did you expect to see a different approach from Livy, given that David Martindale has stepped out of the way, or do you think Marvin will kind of try and keep things as they were?
I think Davey will still be picking the team, probably.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, listen, you're expecting to see some form of change. I think that's obviously why the decision has been made. It is tongue-in-cheek, but, Davey is the type of character that even though he's got a backroom team behind him, he's a pretty tough character. He probably still makes the majority of decisions himself. So I'm sure it has been a relatively, fresh new voice for Livingston players this week, with Marvin Bartley obviously being in charge of training, being in charge of the game against Falkirk tonight. But no, obviously the reading isn't pretty. 1-1 this season for Livingston. The only real solace they can take from that is that it was against Falkirk and it was at home. But that being said, Falkirk are a really, really good side. I've been extremely impressed with them all season long. What they've done over the past 18 months or so. Middle of the table in League One when John McGunn takes over. Win League One in invincible fashion, then win the Championship, and then what they've done this season. I always feel that if you're a team coming for the Championship up to the SPL, not only do you have to be adaptable and change something, but I think you have to be the best in one area. On the ball it's probably difficult given the differences in finances and budgets between a Falkirk to a Celtic, Rangers, Hearts. But I feel they work ever so hard, and I think it's just been that simple thing where they've changed the approach where, we might not be the best team this season, but we're the team that runs the most. And I can't back it up with data or metrics, but every time I watch Falkirk, I'm absolutely shattered when I watch them, because I just feel that they work ever so hard as a collective unit, and that's the reason why they've been so successful this year. I do feel that Falkirk are in a lot better place than they were when they played Livingston at the start of the season. So I think it's going to be really difficult for Livingston to get that second win, obviously for Marvin on his in his first game. But that being said, obviously 14 games remaining, so Marv will hope that he can get some form of reaction sooner rather than later.
It's funny though, if you were going to be Marvin Bartley and you were looking for one game to have as your first game, then it would be against Falkirk. The Livingston have had Falkirk's measure. Certainly last.
It's been a long time, isn't it?
Well,
I
was having a look yesterday. December 2015 is the last time Falkirk won a league game against them. So it's more than 10 years, and it's 12 league games that they've gone without a win against them. And I think in total, Falkirk have won like one of the last 15 against them. So, if you're Marvin and you're looking for a little omen, then you'll cling on to that life raft, I would imagine, as you're going into the game. But Andy's right. The way that Falkirk have played, and as I said earlier, the fact that they never lost any momentum at the weekend against Celtic. They didn't come out of there feeling any worse about themselves. Arguably, I mean, for a Falkirk team to go to Celtic Park and have 14 attempts at goal, and in my lifetime, I can barely remember doing that. In total at Celtic Park. So I think they come out still in pretty good fettle, and it says it all when John McGlynn's looking up the way. And putting a target on Hibs back in fifth place rather than worrying about what's going on over their shoulders. Them losing Ben Parkinson that they've just signed to an injury for what looks like 2 or 3 months was a blow, but they've picked up the young lad Broggio from Aston Villa, who by all accounts and has been recommended by John McGinn to them. So again, Falkirk fans are looking forward to seeing a fresh face in the team as well tonight. So
yeah, all signs point to a positive result, but you never know, do you? In this league?
Don't expect Falkirk fans to say that.
Well, just looking elsewhere, Andy, your beloved Motherwell in action again. As we said, Stephen Welsh coming back in, no departures. There was obviously a lot of talk about Tawanda Maswanise. He's still a Motherwell player. I mean, this is just another massive game for Motherwell, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think there will be obviously an element of relief that the January transfer window's over for Motherwell. I think other teams might have wanted it extended a wee bit longer, but that's what happens when you're doing as well as Motherwell are in terms of individuals and as a collective. I mean, it's going to happen. It's happened to the manager. It's going to happen to key players within the team as well. But obviously, I think it's almost an anomaly what we're seeing. A team with a budget like Motherwell, obviously a new manager coming in with no experience of the Scottish League, and I mean what the group of players have done from the start of the season till February now, obviously is nothing short of incredible. I mean the eye test, the numbers, the data, everything just points towards what a real good side that the boys have been this season. Only one defeat in the last 15. Only conceded 4 goals, as I said, within that time. In the last 15 games, Motherwell have only been in the losing position for 23 minutes of the 15 games. It's remarkable, and I've been lucky enough to be probably the biggest fan this year with the best seat in the house all season long. So it's been a pleasure to watch. It's been a joy to watch. Dundee, in all fairness, have been on an incredible upturn over the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks, given probably what I watched when Dundee came to Fir Park the last time. When I thought on that day I didn't think they were ever in the game, but since that day they put on a brilliant run, won some big games within that, and I think they've got a lot of really good individuals within it as well. Every time I watch them, I've been really impressed with the 2 wide players in Cameron Congreve and Yogan. I think they've been excellent all season long, and then they've added somebody to their group of players that could potentially take their place in the team in Scott Wright, somebody we all obviously really know well in Scottish football. I think it's another really, really good signing for Dundee. So it's going to be a difficult game, obviously, for ourselves, but you've got to go into it with confidence, given how we've played for a long period of time.
Yeah, no reason to suggest Motherwell should be anything but confident, given the recent run. And the final game tonight, Hibs against Dundee United. Hibs, I don't really know what to make of Hibs. They've been up and down, draw against Rangers. They'll be boosted by that, Gordon, won't they?
Yeah, and again, they've got some fresh faces in. Clegy going out on loan was maybe the kind of surprise of their window, but they've got some fresh blood in there as well. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's hard to know what to make of Hibs. Over this season, they're a very, very capable team, and I think everybody kind of, I would have said expected them to be up there, and maybe slightly higher, But I mean, they're 7 points behind Motherwell at the moment. They've got a lot of ground to make up if they want to kind of break that top 4 and make it a kind of Glasgow Edinburgh, monopoly at the top end. But yeah, I mean. It's hard to know. I mean, seeing them against again. I saw them against Falkirk a couple of weeks ago, and found them very disappointing. But given the array of talent that they've got, but Yeah, and even, you know, it's funny that, I mean, because that night obviously, you know, Bowie was kind of outshone by Barney Stewart, and now you know the Bowie, you know, we've talked about Bowie for such big money. He's had a big decision to make in terms of his World Cup hopes as well, you know, and that's that was a big call for Hibs, but I'm not sure what to make of them, as you can probably tell by my kind of hesitation. You know, you can't really look at that game tonight. And it's the same with Dundee United. I mean, Dundee United did so much business in the summer. I mean, I think, was it right back at the start where they had, you know, I mean, they had something like, I think, 11, 12 new faces in the squad right at the start of the season. So January for them seems to have been more about consolidation than anything else. But I mean, they're obviously looking up the way, and they've got a fair amount of distance to make up to get back in the top six as well. So it's a very odd game that tonight. You know, it looks like just a kind of mid-table nothingy game, but both teams have a kind of have to find some momentum from somewhere. You know, they've both been so up and down that you think, right, well, you know, one of them needs to go on a run here, and I'm, you know, I think it's a toss of a coin which one actually does.
Yeah, I know it's really strange what's been going on with the two of them, and I mean, Dundee United, Andy, after that game against Hearts, it was just a capitulation at the end. 2 sendings off, getting beat 3-0. It just kind of feels like they're not really clicking at the moment.
Yeah, I think Dundee United for me have been the most unpredictable team all season long. You know, you look at the start of the season, early form showed you with Kamara and Sapsford and Dolchek. You know, you felt as if Dundee United and Jim Goodwin had recruited extremely well. Clearly looked at bringing in a certain profile. But, you know, throughout the season, there's obviously been these inconsistencies. I think one thing where Dundee United were really successful last year was they were excellent for set pieces, and I thought they were really sound defensively. I think last year that's kind of evaded them a little bit. I think they've almost turned into a different type of team. And at this moment in time, I don't think it's been that successful, because I think they would have had obviously high hopes again. I try to get a top 6 finish. Hibs, on the other hand, I was racking my brains Monday night trying to decide to myself who I think's potentially had the best window. And if it wasn't for Kieran Bowie leaving Hibs, I'd have probably said Hibs, because I think going into the window, I didn't think Hibs had to do a whole lot. I thought their starting 11 was pretty good, and I thought they had plenty of depth in certain areas of the pitch. So I thought their biggest probably task going into January was keeping a hold of their players. You know, Josh Mulligan and Jamie McGrath and Kieran Bowie and the guys that have done really well for them. Now, I certainly don't think you can begrudge him losing Kieran Bowie for a club record fee. I think it's pretty good value for someone that's played 40 games. I think he's done ever so well. But it's a great fee that they've commanded for him. But I think if you look at the players and the profile of players that they've brought in, obviously at the top end of the pitch to replace Kieran Bowie, I know a couple of boys at Sligo Rovers, and they speak ever so highly of Owen Eldon. We obviously got a glimpse of him at the weekend. Dane Scarlett, who's played games for Tottenham's first team, is coming in with obviously a great profile. I've played with Kai Andrews, so I know what Kai Andrews can bring to a game. I thought he was excellent when he came on at the weekend. And then they make, 3 signings on deadline day as well. Anyone that's played Football Manager will tell you that.
Passlight looks like it'll be a very good signing for them as well, but.
Yeah, well, I still remember Football Manager 2015 where he was a wonder kid in that. So I'm still thinking about how good he was back then. But somebody that's played 85 games in the Bundesliga, it's a great profile of signing. So I almost look for the outside looking in. I feel like Hibs is probably been arguably the most impressive window so far.
Interesting, very interesting. Well, I suppose we'll see over the next couple of weeks and months if that pays off. You can listen to all the action tonight on BBC Radio Scotland Extra from 6 o'clock. Well, that is all we've got time for. Many thanks to Andy and Gordon, and thank you very much for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will catch you again very soon.
It's petty, it's ill-informed.
Are President Trump's cuts having an adverse effect on research?
It's pandemonium.
What number's that in the periodic table?
PD, number 47. I don't know.
I've done the shooting clays before. The longer you do it, the sorter obviously it gets.
When Craig said there he'd been shooting the clays, I imagined him out a back line. Somebody's washing, you know.
William Shatner, his secretary, contacted me to say, when Bill has a question now and again, can he contact you? And then one time he called me up and he wanted to know, David, what is a photon? I'm thinking, this is incredible. Captain Kirk wants to know what a photon is, you know.
I once met a guy who referred to a globe as a ball map. A ball map.
Look at the ball map.
What we normally do is spin the ball map and we see where we go on holiday.
The Off the Ball podcast, available every Monday on BBC Sounds.